1, 2, 3. Hello and welcome to Green Queens, the perfect podcast for imperfect environmentalists. We're your hosts, sustainability and climate presenters Imogen and Abbie, and this is your guilt-free guide to living a little greener.
Are you good to go?
I'm good to go.
Good to go. Hot to go.
Hot to go.
How's your week been?
My week.
What have you been up to recently?
It's been a really chaotic few weeks, to be honest. We went to Lush. There was that mental week where we went to Lush. Obviously, you would have now listened to the Lush episode, hopefully, as Green Queen listeners.
And if you haven't, pause, go listen to it, come back.
Yes, because this is going to give spoilers away otherwise. So we did that. We went all the way to Poole, which is quite far from Yorkshire, actually, I will say.
Very, very far from Yorkshire.
So also, this will be on the Instagram account by now. So you need to go to green.queens.pod and search this reel out, which I made. And I messaged you on the morning that we were travelling to Poole.
You've made it.
And I was like, can you record a load of clips of you travelling to Poole? And I'll do a mishmash of us both making our journeys. You did 4 recordings of you working at your desk. So the clip literally goes, you at work, me having breakfast, you at work, me on a run, you at work, me on the train. I was balancing my phone in so many different locations to get the footage, and you were just at work the whole time.
Well, you messaged me about this, and I was like, I actually just have quite a lot of work to do today. And then my husband was working from home, and I was like, look, can you take a video of me? And he was narrating what was going on. So I think I just sent you without sound, but if you had them with sound, he's going, typing, typing, typing. I then proceeded to write, typing, 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 typing. And it was in a document which I'd shared with the chief economist of the Climate Change Committee, who was watching me write, typing, typing, typing. And I'm mortified. But I that's what we do.
You've got to go. You've got to go to the Instagram now. If you're not following, follow, because who knows how many more viral moments we may well see where I'm putting 110% effort in and you're typing, typing, typing.
Well, I was typing aggressively, and honestly, I think I had 2 podcasts to do that day, and then back-to-back meetings. And I was like, Abby, this is all I've got. This is as good as it gets.
The last thing you needed from me was being like, so I've had this idea for Instagram. But anyway, so we did our journeys down to Poole, which was hilarious. And my travel was significantly longer than yours.
Much longer.
Yeah, so we had the most amazing time at Lush, which we're going to get into. And then we came back. I was filming in Whitby the following day for BBC Morning Live. A really, really special piece, actually, about a train that is called the Forget Me Not train. And it runs for people with dementia, and it kind of helps them bring back memories, and there was loads of music, and it was just the most wonderful day. And then it was comic relief.
Now I'm going to point people to your Instagram, because it was, on that particular day, I was having a bit of a day of pain with how much work I had to do, and your Instagram was bringing me so much joy.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain what you did?
Do you know what's really annoying is that obviously comic relief, I've worked for the BBC for years, I've done loads of various bits and bobs and challenges, and I have found them very challenging, whereas with this one I went to the Wheelie Big Challenge with Gethin Jones and Helen Skelton, who were doing a 24-hour roller skate in a roller rink, and I was like, I've got to do an hour. I think I'm going to be really good. They had asked me beforehand what my skating ability was, and I went what I thought was quite modest with a 5 out of 10. When I was younger, I used to ice skate, and I can ski, so I was kind of thinking, I've got this, and I just tend to be one of those people that can turn my hand to most things. Clearly not roller skating, because I was rolled onto that rink and just froze. The terror in my face. Poor Gethin ended up roller skating round with me, just holding my hand. It looked like I had been...
It doesn't even look like he's holding your hand, though. It's like he's holding your whole arm.
Also, we were mic'd up. I guess the point was, because Helen and Gethin were broadcasting live for 24 hours as well on this live stream on the BBC iPlayer. I think the whole point of them getting people to join them was so that that kind of broadcasting was broken up, that you could kind of take the baton and ask them some questions and, I don't know, give them something to talk about. And instead I was just silent the whole time because I was trying to concentrate so much on not falling over. So honestly, it was really, I gave myself the ick pretty hard when I watched that footage back at how terrible I was on a roller skate.
But terrible for you, hilarious for everybody else. And especially because you're a very chic person, you had a great outfit on.
No.
But there's a limit to how chic you look like with big elbow pads.
Yeah, the helmet as well.
Pads and helmet.
I think I've got a very round face, and add to that a very round helmet and some roller skates, some very round wheels, and it was just it was all a bit too much. Not helped by the fact that I was on Helen Skelton, Blue Peter presenter, glamorous, gorgeous, really good at everything, and Kimberly flipping Walsh from Girls Aloud. I was like, no, sorry, no, I didn't get the memo that it was going to be this glamorous. And also, Helen and Gethin had 6 weeks worth of roller skate training. Kimberly was in Elf the Musical a few years ago, which was on wheels. So she knew what she was doing. And then there was me.
I mean, bring in Alan Titchmarsh next time is what I say.
Yeah. So it's been a rather chaotic few weeks, but wonderful all the same. What about you?
Well, similarly chaotic. Obviously, we were in Poole for Lush. We had the most amazing time. I cannot recommend that podcast enough.
Yeah.
But after that, and relevant to this conversation, I filmed the launch of a new electric vehicle called the BYD Sea Lion 7.
Nice.
It's so nice.
Yeah.
And actually, you know, I review a lot of cars and I think a lot of them are pretty good. I haven't come away from a car shoot for a while where I'd be like, I want that one. I really want that one. It was really, really good. But that evening, I had to interview 2 sports personalities.
Ooh.
One was Jason Robinson, who some people may know as his former England rugby captain. He scored the only try in the 2003 World Cup final, which England won. So amazing, phenomenal guy. And also Phil Parkinson, who is the manager of Wrexham AFC.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and like so unique because who else in the world manages a team of that particular level of football? So they're in League One.
Yeah.
But also on a global stage with Hollywood backers, like such an unusual set of stress and pressure and everything. So really, really interesting interview experience. I've also interviewed a guy called Andy Palmer, who again, super, super relevant to this conversation because he was like the pioneer behind the Nissan Leaf back in 2009.
The OG.
2010. The OG. He really is the OG of electric vehicles. And he does a lot of like battery stuff now. So it's been busy.
Yeah. But it looked like you had a really nice weekend.
I had a really nice weekend. Really nice weekend with my uni pals. They're now all having lots of gorgeous babies and had lots of cuddles and then also got able to give them back.
Lots of lovely handing back. Yeah, that's the ceremonial thing, isn't it? When you go, oh, bye.
Yeah. But it was one of those weekends where spring has sprung.
Yeah.
And actually, I am definitely someone who benefits from being outdoors.
Same.
And to be outdoors, not in 1,000 layers, was just good for the soul.
I know. It's so lovely, isn't it? Although I did walk here looking like Mike Wazowski in the fluffiest, warmest green coat. As soon as I came through the door, I was like, get it off me, it's too hot.
You just don't know what to do in this weather.
It's the transitional wardrobe. And I think we will be in April now when this podcast episode goes out. But right now it's still March, and they very much call March full spring because although it may well be mild, it's going to probably get very cold again.
Yeah. And this comes back. We've spoken about this on the podcast before. You need 11 coats to live in the UK.
Yeah. Oh, and that is a top fave, that green fluffy machine.
It's so good. For anyone, go to Abby's Instagram, see this green coat. I messaged you when you first put it on your Instagram and you were like, it's great, but there's a very limited set of windows to which it can be worn.
Yeah, and I've gone slightly too mild today. It's too mild for the coat, but also it was dry, so I kind of had to get it out when I could. But yeah, we mentioned obviously that we went to Lush, and the episode will have gone out now. And I just feel like we didn't get the chance because we were having such a glorious time in a sensory overload.
It was a sensory overload.
2 things: A, my house now smells amazing because of the amount of incredible products that we brought back from Lush.
Yeah,
and B, I adore the fact that we've been getting, I would say, daily updates from Chris, who makes these wonderful videos for us on the products he's been using and enjoying. Great story about the bath bomb, Chris, so thank you for that.
I just really enjoy that we're all having these parallel experiences with these eye masks on, being like, how did you find the moisturiser?
We were like, oh my god, but that balm, that balm is going to last forever. Chris was like, I really like that one. So Lush is it appeals to a very wide audience, and I certainly hope that podcast has done. But I just feel like we need to give Ruth her real moment and spotlight. And I also think I butchered her name, Ruth Andrades. Calling her Ruth.
It like also she has the most phenomenal, passionate way of speaking, and we definitely don't do her name.
She's the type of person that walks into a room and her energy, like she kind of lights up the room. I would love for people to describe me in that way. I think that's got to be one of the biggest compliments ever, and I truly mean it. There was no PR there. None of what came out of her mouth, she had to double check or she's had to run past anybody. Every single answer to every single question, she just spoke from the heart, which I think we probably would both say is quite rare, particularly
really rare
with an organisation of that size.
With that size, and also, you know, once you're in a brand for that amount of time, like you really live and breathe the sort of company messaging often, and that often trickles its way into various interview situations. Yeah. And sometimes it's really hard to get people away from the slightly corporate spiel. But she was so refreshing because she actually mentioned the times where Lush isn't perfect, that where there are areas for improvement, where there are tensions within the business about how decisions get made. And so refreshing, so inspiring.
Yeah, I know. I just think we fangirl all of our guests here, but we really went pretty hard. The WhatsApp chat has not stopped us being like, oh. And then when she said that was so amazing.
And then when she looked at me,
and then when I pronounced her name so beautifully. So yeah, we needed to. Oh, even Ted, the dog.
Ted's
so excited by Ruth.
So no one will be able to see her, not even people who are watching this. Ted is down here. Teddy, the dog, which is very old. She does these real old lady sneezes these days where she's like, like, go on, get out your system. Anyway.
Oh, maybe it was, I mean, some of the Lush stuff does smell pretty strong. Oh, it could have been that. But no, it was just, we had the most fun, didn't we? And also special shout out to Michael, who we met. He was one of the people. Every product in Lush that is handmade has a sticker on the packaging to show who's made that product.
Yeah.
And it is like a cartoon character, isn't it, of the people that made it. And we met Michael, who was one of those cartoon characters, but is a real life person and was just such a sweetheart.
And the one thing I want to say about Michael before we get into today's topic is that we got sent his profile before we met him. Yeah. And he'd spent the majority of his career as a baker. Now he's been at Lush for the past 8 years, I think, seeing out until his retirement. And one of the things that he said that he loves about Lush is that A, he was able to see he has some really transferable skills from the world of baking, but B, the opportunity to spend time with young people and to open up his worldview because he's hearing different opinions from different age groups and different backgrounds. And I thought we need more Michaels in our lives.
Yes, we do. We need more Michaels. We need more Lush. The fact that they're not on social media, they came off social media in 2021 off the back of some huge amount of crazy research that came up with this terrifying stats about the impact that it has on young people.
Yeah.
I just wish that more brands took that kind of anti-commercial approach, which I know might be a really stupid thing to say, but I really admire it.
Well, we should say, yes, anti-commercial in some aspects, still hugely profitable organisation.
Just goes to show that you don't have to just follow the leader always. You don't have to be a sheep. You can totally be yourself and it can still be a successul business. And I would argue sometimes more successful because people would appreciate the fact that you're trying to go against the grain a bit. We had the most wonderful day. And I will just remind you, Imogen, that Michael gave me the rose.
He did. He gave you a rose. I'm going to say because you were closest to him. But I don't want to be, but the thing is, you left it in my car.
I did leave it in your car.
And then I had it here and I was like, it looks like I'm just really bitter. And I took it off you. And I was going to send you a picture. And then, anyway, we got to share in the end.
We did. And Michael had some of the best skin that I've ever seen.
Yes.
Used that rose face mask and loved it.
He is a good ambassador for the products.
Yes. We needed to do that.
Yes.
We needed to just get that out of our system because also today's topic, I messaged you the other day with this voice note because I just had this moment where I was driving my car and thinking I must have just refreshed my notifications on my social media or something. I will caveat this by saying I'm a brand ambassador for an EV charging company called Osprey. After being an EV driver for maybe 2.5 years, I realised that was one of the charging companies that was one that I found most reliable. And when the opportunity came up to work with them, it was an absolute no-brainer. And also it's nice because I feel like we're very much partnering as opposed to me just selling the fact that it's charging
They love your ideas.
We're collaborating on trying to educate people who inevitably will have to make the change over the next few years to an EV. But through doing that, I have obviously ended up making far more content around EVs, which is something that I didn't do an awful lot of beforehand. And I must have just refreshed my notifications and had so many messages from people who are so angry.
Yes.
About EVs. And I got in my car and I was driving my little battery run Mini and I was like, I couldn't help but laugh at the fact that these people were getting themselves so worked up, so like getting their knickers in such a twist over a car that has a battery in, which I did have a little car when I was younger that had a battery in, a Barbie Jeep. And I couldn't help but laugh and just be like, these often men, not always, but these men are getting themselves so fuming about essentially a Barbie Jeep.
That's what we distill it to, a Barbie Jeep.
So I was like, we need to talk about this in the podcast because it's hilarious.
Well, I was really glad that you sent me that voice note, because in my other job, I work for the Fully Charged Show and the Everything Electric Show. Our whole premise has been built around electrification technologies, and a big part of that is test driving a lot of electric vehicles. And I feel as such, when I go into a lot of social situations, there's inevitably someone there who has some questions about electric vehicles. And it's almost like they're like, fight me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, okay, what is it? What is it that you're actually worried about?
Yeah.
What is it that you have concerns about? Let's address that. And then let's see if we're still really cross about this. And, you know, I think the kind of headline is always that new technologies are scary.
Yeah.
And being forced to change is always annoying, or the perception is that it's annoying. And I think, secondly, we have something in this country called the ZEV mandate, which is around the proportion of electric vehicle, or the proportion of new sales from automakers that need to be electric. That's going to increase up to 100% by 2030 or 2035. Now, this really exposes the point that I'm making, actually. There's this feeling that these targets have been imposed, number one. And number two, they've not been communicated that well.
No.
I get very confused between 2030 and 2035. There is a subtle difference between the two. So put all these things together, and I think people are cross about it.
But I mean, are they? Or are they like hardcore petrol heads that are really into their petrol and diesel cars? I can't work out what it is that is frustrating them. And like, sometimes I try and engage in the conversation, but ultimately because of the fact that I've made the content about the EV, they then hate me and they just don't want to entertain it. So I honestly find it hilarious. And what's really sweet is that Osprey on a couple of occasions have checked in with me to make sure that I'm okay. And same with, various other organisations that I work with, obviously making things about climate change that can be a little bit divisive. People will always check in to make sure that I'm not personally affected by the comments. I'm not that easily offended, I will say. But I actually do find the electric car frustration hilarious because I cannot get my head around it. What I would understand if people were being told, you have to get rid of your petrol and diesel car right now and buy a really expensive car that you don't know how to fuel.
And I think that therein lies the challenge.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of misinformation that has existed historically. And there's also been a lot of historic electric vehicles that have perhaps been brilliant for early adopters and the people who are willing to accept that things aren't perfect, but want to try the new technology. And some of those technologies, those are what have set the general narrative. So, for example, nowadays, if you are to drive an electric vehicle on average over the lifetime, compared to the petrol equivalent, you'll save around £5,850. So it is cheaper.
A rough estimate.
Rough estimate. There may or may not have been.
Is that a year? How much? What? Or over the lifespan of the car? Okay, fine.
Yeah. So
that's a lot to save for a year, actually. Thinking about it.
Amazing, wouldn't it? But if you have solar panels on your roof and if you have a home charger, the savings go up astronomically because at that point you're virtually driving for free. So
driving for free
on sunshine,
instead of putting smelly, expensive fuel into your car. What is not to like?
And also, if you do have a home charger, never thinking about it because you come home, plug it in.
It's literally like my phone. It goes on charge every night at the house. My car.
Exactly. And so there's this perception that like electric cars are more expensive. Today, the savings are huge.
Yeah.
There are so many more options available. There are some really fantastic options available that are in the sub 20k category. One of the cars that's really worth looking at is the Renault 5, which is amazing and starts at, I think, like between £20,000 and £25,000. So there's some really genuinely cool, much more affordable options out there. Second-hand EVs, of which there are loads, are on average £2,000+ cheaper than their internal combustion engine equivalent. But, so that is true today. But the first electric vehicles were more expensive. Getting a Nissan Leaf in 2009 was an expensive thing to do.
Yeah.
And back then, the battery technology was something like, it was 10 times more expensive, the battery technology in 2010.
Like any new technology though, isn't it?
Exactly. And And because the technology was not as good, the range wasn't as good. But today, you know, the average range of an electric vehicle is about 400 kilometers. You can get more than that. You can get less than that, depending on what you need to do. And as I said, the battery technology has come down by a factor of 10. So these are a lot of this rumor mill is based on technology that was true 15 years ago.
Which is kind of like saying, like, how can I give this a good example?
Be like comparing an iPhone today by saying I'm not getting an iPhone because back in 2010 they weren't very good.
Yeah
Like, well,
or being like, I really want a good example and I can't think of anything. I wanted to say something stupid like, or trying to squeeze into an age 8 pair of shorts when you're age 25, but it doesn't really work.
But I think you know, other things, if we look at what has the change been between 2010 and 2025? Okay.
Oh, working from home.
Working from home.
Zoom calls.
Netflix didn't exist in 2010.
Oh, those were the days.
Yeah. I
Just
mean,
watching Ground Force as we spoke about in the week.
well, exactly. So, like, how we consumed TV was different. Social media wasn't the same thing then. ChatGPT didn't exist. Like, our world was so different in 2010.
Green Queens was merely a dream.
Merely a dream. We hadn't met back then.
I wouldn't want to go back to those days, Imogen.
Oh my God, I saw an amazing post from, do you follow Celeste Barber on Instagram?
Yeah.
And she's like plastered these pictures of her as like maybe like a 16-year-old girl. And she was like, some of us don't want to look younger. Yeah. Some of us are better now.
You know, hard relate because we were not gifted, I think, by growing up in the kind of 90s, early noughties. That was a time of terrible fashion, heroin chic. You had to look really skinny.
Yeah.
Blue eyeliner and blue mascara.
Yeah.
And there was no such thing as contouring. And the kids nowadays are all about wellness and skin and glowing and like effortlessly slicking their hair back. They've never looked like Miss Trunchbull in their lives and they don't know how good they've got it for that very reason.
But then I think at the same time, because I look at, you know, the amount of information they have, maybe we were, you know, we were uninhibited because we weren't burdened by having all of that information.
I was just burdened by wanting to look like Mary Kate and or Ashley.
Oh.
I know.
Yeah.
Those were the days. Anyway, from EVs.
EVs to Mary Kate and Ashley. Seamless. But I think the point that I would make when it comes to people who are cross about electric vehicles, I don't blame them actually, because...
Don't say that. I do. Don't be cross with me. It's not my fault.
That is the thing. I'm like, I empathise with your concerns, people who are cross, because there has been all this misinformation.
Okay, fine.
It's based on out-of-date information.
We'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
But I don't like this combative attitude.
No.
Like, okay, what are you scared about? Let's throw me in the middle.
That is where I find it funny, is that like, there's lots of things in the world I don't understand, but I would never walk into a lab environment where they're testing for some sort of antibiotic or whatever and be like, no way, I'm dead mad about that, because I don't understand it. Like, I physically don't understand it. So is it coming from like a place of insecurity where because they don't understand it's very easy? I think ultimately there's a saying that I'm going to definitely butcher, but like, I think there's that herd mentality when it comes to hating. People love to hate. People
and
love
you can
to
monetize hate.
Yeah, which is a shame because I think we should monetize love.
Love and joy and happiness. And sadly, I guess this is probably a problem with social media platforms.
Yeah.
They work better by propelling hateful, divisive thoughts.
I think we should call this podcast Why We Hate EVs, and it will get loads of people listening to it.
It would get way more than if we said why EVs are a really good pragmatic choice.
It's so yeah, don't call it that, mate. Don't call it that. We'll get cancelled.
Oh my God. The number of times whenever I've been coming up with a title for a YouTube video or a podcast or whatever, and I'm like, what I would love to say is, here are some reasons why this is good.
Yeah.
And here are some reasons why it's bad.
Yeah.
And here's why you should have this information, make your own conclusion.
Yeah.
But instead you have to be like, this is the best thing I've ever seen.
It's clickbait, isn't it? But then I'm like, oh God, why do people fall for it? And then I can't help but there be some celebrity scandal. And I'm like, oh, but has he been pictured in public with her? Yeah, you know.
Oh my God, I won't
name who at the moment, but I feel like we both kind of know who we're talking about.
But you know, they're like, you will never guess what transformation. And I'm like,
yeah.
I can feel myself going. But I wanted, on the pragmatism level, I wanted to share some fun facts because I feel, you know, as you know, I'm a highly logical person.
You are.
Love my bullet points.
Yes, you do.
I love a structured set of arguments for and against.
And actually, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Due to you being incredibly busy and me having some of the worst Wi-Fi a trainer's ever seen today, we've come into this episode with very few notes and very little structure. How are you feeling about things?
Well, this is where I'm going to thank the powers of past me.
Okay.
I had to do a keynote presentation on the current status of electric vehicles for a semiconductor company,
Okay.
which was amazing because as a semiconductor company,
What's a semiconductor
so
company?
like chips, any kind of like processing chip,
Not like fish and.
not fish hand,
No, okay.
unfortunately, computational chips.
Okay.
But they provide chips to the automotive industry.
That's so cool.
It was really cool. It was really, really cool. And they...
When I say cool, I mean in a teenager way. I mean in like a geeky green way.
really cool. It was so cool. And like, you know, they have all of these relationships with these like global automotive companies because lots of cars are laden with tech and all this sort of stuff. And they'd brought me in as like, give us an up-to-date like landscape of what electric vehicles do. So
Yeah.
I was like, Abby, I've got these facts from past me.
Hold my drink. Okay, good.
Yeah. And but the one that I like always share, because I think it kind of, for me, it speaks to this kind of deep pragmatism of why electric vehicles, for me, make sense because I think they're a more efficient technology. So an internal combustion engine vehicle is fundamentally, so when I say internal combustion engine, petrol or diesel,
Yeah.
fundamentally, it's so inefficient. So if you think about energy in, the amount of energy that goes in, and I purely mean like the amount of petrol you put in,
Okay.
that then turns into motion, moving the car forward.
Yeah.
It's like only 16 to 25% of that energy in goes out as energy out.
Where's the rest of it going?
It's being lost as friction, it's being lost as heat, like combustion itself isn't a particularly efficient process. And in any other part of our lives, we simply wouldn't stand for that. Like imagine if you put £1 in,
Yeah.
but got 16p worth of chocolate out.
Yeah.
It'd be like,
It's kind of like buying a melon, but only being allowed to eat the nub end of it, having to bin the rest.
Exactly.
You wouldn't go back to that shop and buy that melon anymore.
so lovely you went for a melon. There was a slight look of panic in your
You're
eyes.
like, where are we going here? Chris cut.
But yeah, imagine you bought a whole lemon. And then,
Melon. I said melon. Did I say lemon?
no, you said. Did I say lemon? Oh, I meant melon. You did. They are anagrams of each other.
Yeah, they are.
Ugh.
No, melon. You're
Melon.
buying the melon.
You
I wanted
bought-
to go with something big and juicy.
Okay, big and juicy. You bought a big and juicy melon. You are acting out your
Yeah.
best bits from Dirty Dancing, which is carrying the melon.
Carried a watermelon.
And you cut it, and you're only allowed to take 16 to 25% of it. And you just have
Rubbish.
to bin the rest of
That's
it.
terrible.
You'd be like, that's terrible.
You would never do it.
You'd never do it. An electric vehicle, meanwhile,
Yeah.
you'd get to keep 87 to 91%.
That's a lot of melon.
It's a lot of melon.
Yeah.
You could feed your family.
Yeah.
You'd be fine. And so, purely from an energy in versus energy out, electric vehicles win.
Melon math.
And then you look at kind of what people always like, oh, but the batteries are really bad.
Yeah.
And no question, there is.
Because the lithium.
Lithium's not so much of a problem,
Okay.
actually. So, in your batteries, you've got lots of chemicals, like elements that make up the cathodes and anodes. So, the terms you hear all the time are LFP, which are lithium iron phosphate. Those materials are quite abundant, but they're controversial because a lot of the supply chain is concentrated in China.
Okay.
And there's definitely an argument to like help diversify that. But lithium is quite an abundant material. There's lots of it in Australia. There's lots of it in Chile. There's various deposits in various places in the US as well. So that one's like kind of, we need diversification, but they're abundant materials. The one that's been more controversial historically is NMC, which stands for nickel, manganese, cobalt. And cobalt has been historically associated with child labour in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Right.
And no question, it sparked a lot of thoughts around like how do we improve the sort of ethical nature of that supply chain.
Yeah.
But there's also this big shift to going to LFP technology anyway, because it's a better technology. So, but the benefit of batteries is that by their nature, they're inherently more circular. So at the end of a vehicle's life, the battery is still really good. So you could take it out and use it for stationary energy storage. So storing wind or solar when there's loads of it to use later. And then once it's done doing that, it can be totally recycled. And actually, in the case of an electric car, the only bits that you couldn't recycle would probably be about 30 kilos in the end.
Right.
Meanwhile, if you own a petrol diesel car, you will burn over the course of its lifetime. And bearing in mind, when you burn it, it's oil that's just poof, gone. And there's been a whole carbon footprint to even refine that oil in the first place. Over the course of its lifetime, you'll burn a stack of barrel of oils that would, if you put them on top of each other, would be 90 meters high. So then you've got 90 meters of oil gone versus 30 kilos of waste.
And what's the deal with, because this is what a lot of the comments are, oh, but your battery, it needs replacing after so many years in a car. But the interesting thing is these questions or these statements aren't being made about petrol and diesel cars.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about what happens to an engine after.
Yeah, it'll get scrapped.
Yeah, exactly. So I find it really interesting that people are like, yeah, but the battery. But I'm like, but the engine. And also, the battery, I was going to say, we have the answers for the batteries. You have the answers for what the batteries do. You know what happens to them.
And actually, when the first EVs came out, people had to be, the technology wasn't as good, and also manufacturers had to be kind of cautious about what the warranty was. But what they're finding is that the batteries are lasting much longer than they anticipated. Yeah. So, you just have this really good bit of tech that goes on and on and on
It's
and on.
It's bizarre, isn't it, that so many people are reluctant to be like, oh, this could actually be really good. They're so but the people are so determined to hate it. They are it's at their cost and at their detriment. They're still going to hate it out of principle now because they've said it. It's so bizarre.
And I really feel like until it is we have true cost parity with a petrol and diesel engine, those feelings will persist.
Yeah.
But when also we get to a point where we have so much renewable energy that it's basically free to drive, it becomes really hard.
I think this is it. So my parents are a great example of this. My dad has never been anti-EV. Just when he got his latest car, and I will say he's not the kind of person to get a new car every few years. His old car was breaking down all the time, so he had to get a new car. And we talked to him about it, and he didn't. He went for did he go for a diesel? I can't remember. Petrol or diesel? I think it's a diesel. Fine, you do you, hun. Hi, Paul. But we knew he was moving into this new build property. He likes okay there.
My God, sorry, I just had a totally dead leg and now I'm about to actually accidentally nudge the dog. Sorry, continue.
Pins and needles. So now they have this new build house, which is super efficient. It came with solar panels. It came with an EV charger. We were trying to talk to my dad about battery storage and how that would be really beneficial for him. Well, the man is obsessed. And now he's got his app, which tells him all the information. He has now ordered a battery, so that's being delivered, so he's going to be able to obviously store and offset and sell back to the grid and be fabulous. And last time we were there, Jake, my husband, was like, Paul, mate, you really should have got an EV. You could literally be fueling it for free. And I think it's kind of killing him now that he didn't, but good for him. He's not just going to swap, sell it and get a new car. He doesn't need a new car. He'd be far better, like Laura said, running that current car that he's got to the ground before getting a new one. That goes without saying. What we're not saying is everybody go out and buy an EV. It's just a shame that when the opportunity presented itself, he was clearly a little bit reluctant when now he could be running his car for free.
And that's it. I think, everyone has to do the maths to see when it makes sense.
The penny's got to drop yourself. A lot of people will not be told, my dad included, and he's sussed it out himself now. And what's funny is after years of us being like, you really should think about it. The other day he was like, yeah, I probably should have got an electric car actually last time.
And you're like, oh, really?
Interesting insight, Dad. If only I'd have thought of that sooner.
Well, it's so... I think you're right, though. The, anger that it can generate is... It comes from people feeling uncertain, definitely. Yeah. And I actually asked... so last week I was looking at the BYD Sea Lion 7, which, aside from having a slightly hilarious name... is a really fantastic.
I heard you earlier being like, yeah, what are we getting? Because Chris works with you a little bit on the fully charged stuff as well. And you were like, yeah, so just the sea lion stuff, can you just send it over to me? And I was thinking, wow, that must have been a fun shoot with a sea lion. I didn't realise it was the car.
Well, they have one called the BYD Seal.
Okay.
And they have one called BYD Sea Lion. And in preparing for the shoot, I needed to be looking up all the stats and everything. And I was like, hang on. What is the difference between a seal and a sea lion?
ChatGPT, help.
I did. I went straight to ChatGPT, and I can tell you that they are both part of the fin-footed family.
Okay.
So they're very closely related. But a sea lion has like legs that it can move along.
Okay.
Whereas a sea lion, a seal just moves along its body, like its belly.
Okay, right. Good to know. Thank you. I wonder if there's anything similar with the car. Maybe the car has legs that can...
Well, so it's interesting because BYD have basically their like lineup. They're trying to get like the whole lineup. So there's an option for everyone. So at the moment they've got the Atto 3, which I guess is like an MG4. They've got a Dolphin. No, probably the Dolphin's like, again, ridiculous names. Dolphin's like an MG4.
And then the Great White, and then the killer whale, yeah.
Well, so at the moment, they're known for being like reasonably affordable. The Sea Line is definitely its more luxurious end. So they start at 46,000 pounds. Definitely quite expensive. In Australia, they're half the price because there are fewer tariffs.
Oh, the difference that makes.
I know. But they're bringing in a car which in China is called the BYD Seagull, and in China it's £8,000. It will probably be double that here in the UK, but it's also going to be called the BYD
Seagull.
Dolphin Surf.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I
Which is a
prefer the
bit long.
Seagull.
But they BYD, if you haven't heard of BYD, you will start.
It stands for Build Your Dreams, which I think is so bougie for a car brand.
Isn't it? But
Yeah.
also like a bit low.
Also a bit absurd.
Yeah. But they, they're now the third largest automaker on the planet.
Yeah.
They are the world's biggest electric vehicle
And they just
company.
seem to have kind of appeared overnight, which obviously isn't how it's happened, but it's how it feels on our roads.
Well, it's definitely done like a do and then
Yeah.
like ping. But I spoke to Stella Lee, who is their executive vice president, and she's so glamorous. So very, very glamorous. She was wearing an amazing Louis Vuitton jacket. But anyway. And I was like, what would you say is the biggest difference between a European and UK consumer versus a Chinese consumer? Because the EV uptake in China is just like trumps what we're doing.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, in China, I feel like there is a greater appetite to adopt new technology and to see new technology as a better option. And she was like, and frankly, she's like, any person who's buying a car who doesn't go electric is seen as being extremely old fashioned. And she actually said, they're basically like, who's this person? Are they a farmer? Were her exact words.
okay.
I'm sure she wouldn't want to be quoted.
Isn't it
on that.
funny? It's just like society has deemed them uncool.
Yes. And meanwhile here there is a much greater reticence to adopt new technology, but it's so specific to cars or so specific to electric vehicles because in every other aspect we're very willing to adopt
Wow,
new
yeah,
technology.
it is funny, isn't it? It just feels like this might have been like the nail in the coffin with everything else that's changed that people are. And don't get me wrong, I'm a real traditionalist. I'm quite a romantic. I love to think back to. Jake and I always say that we think that we were born in the wrong era and stuff. We love we technology sometimes is the burden of our lives, and there's a lot of stuff that we don't want to do. But with this, I can't get my head around it because it's great. I was going to say it's not terrifying. No, it's not terrifying, but it's also flipping brilliant.
They are just more enjoyable to drive. They have better technology in them.
And I'll be totally honest and say, a couple of people have said, I would miss the gears. I said, because I love driving. I love cars. I used to work for Motors TV, for goodness sake. But I do not miss the gears. I just have one more thing, that this is something that pops up all the time. So I want to get your take on this because I did a video about car tax, which, by the way, if you're listening to this now, if you're an EV driver, you'll have to pay car tax from 2025 April, which is a bit of a shame, but it is what it is. And lots of people saying that it should be so. People also claiming that EVs are heavier and therefore damage our roads more.
Ooh, so they are heavier. That is true. But the fact that they're damaging roads is a bit of a myth.
Yeah.
An argument that does come up as a consequence is if they're heavier, do they create more like tyre particulates from braking?
Yeah.
No, because of regen braking.
Yeah.
So in an electric car, you can basically do one pedal driving where every time you stop, it sort of goes back into the motor rather than like stopping with a brake pad.
And anybody that's driven an EV or anybody that hasn't, when you are using your regen braking well, you can actually see your battery range holding or sometimes even going up.
Yeah.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
You're like repowering your car just by driving well.
Yeah, like you drive downhill and you're like, hey, I'm not using any of my range. Yes, literally. And so actually, because you're less dependent on your brake brake pads, that additional weight isn't necessarily a bad thing from a creating more tyre particulates.
And I should have done a and written a note about this, but I did read some sort of stat that the AA put out about, obviously completely impartially, about damage and potholes and roads and stuff. And there is absolutely no evidence to suggest that EVs are causing more damage to roads because they're heavier. The joke is we live in rural Yorkshire, sandwiched in between lots of quarries. Obviously, there's so much lorry traffic it just absolutely ruins the roads. And there was somebody that made a comment about the fact that Jake and I drive EVs, that we were the problem.
Oh my God!
I was like, okay, so me and my electric Mini or the 20 quarry trucks an hour, I'm the problem, babe.
Yeah, let's just put them side by side and have a little look.
But I feel like we could definitely rant about this all day.
Can I tell you a fun fact before we go about the origin of a pothole?
Please do.
Do you know why it's called a pothole?
No.
I will tell you.
Okay.
So I think this should definitely be fact checked. I ask anyone who's listening to go away and fact check this for me. But I think Stockport used to be a real pottery hub in the UK. And clay was very expensive. If there was a little pot, little hole in the road, actually it was quite a great source of clay.
Okay.
So people would take a bit of clay out of the little hole that was there to use it to make pots. But obviously the more you take out, the bigger the hole would get.
Yeah.
And so pothole literally comes from, taking clay out to make it into a pot.
Oh my goodness me, I would never have guessed that. I would have thought it would have been something to do with the size and the shape of a pot, but no.
No, and do you know where I got that fact?
Go on.
Great Pottery Throwdown.
Okay. Says a lot about you, mate.
It's so good.
Okay, on that note, we'll end it here, shall we?
Let's end it here.
Yeah.
I think with the caveat that I know we haven't spoken about charging, we could definitely get into that in another time.
We've got another episode. We've got another few years of this podcast. We've got so much to talk about.
Charging, here we come.
Yeah, do keep spamming me on social media because it's all good content for the pod. But no, any questions, I was going to say we are here to answer them. You are here to answer them. Very much the expert.
Well, send them in and we'll chat about them next time.
Whether it's pothole related or
Alan Titchmarsh related. We've got it all.
Yeah, Alan, if you're listening again, we'd love to get you on. But we hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like, please subscribe, please follow us on social media, and please don't send us hate about EVs.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Green Queens. If you did and you'd like to hear more, we'd be so very grateful if you could subscribe and join the Green group chat for weekly episodes.